So, as we step into this next section, I want to ground our discussion in the data because these numbers tell a powerful and heartbreaking story. So, according to the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 42% of high school students reported experiencing persistent sadness or hopelessness in 2021. And that's nearly half of all adolescents walking through our halls every day. 22%, more than one in five, said they had seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. And one in three teens reported that their mental health was poor most of the time. Now, I don't share these numbers to shock you. I share them because they represent real young people, students sitting in our classrooms, showing up in our offices, walking our hallways, often while struggling in silence. And these statistics confirm what most of us already feel intuitively, that we are in the midst of a profound mental health crisis among youth. And because schools are where students spend most of their time, and because school counselors are among the few adults they may consistently interact with, we have become the de facto first responders in that crisis. So the need for accessible, comprehensive, and integrated mental health support has never been more urgent. And this is not peripheral to our work anymore, it is our work. So, when we talk about the mental health crisis among youth, it's essential to understand that there isn't just one cause. There are multiple overlapping forces shaping how students experience the world today. So, let's start with social media and technology. Our students are growing up in a culture of constant connectivity, where self worth is often measured in likes, views, and follows. And the comparison culture online, coupled with cyberbullying and disrupted sleep patterns, can fuel things like anxiety, depression, and distorted self perception. And many teens feel pressure to maintain a digital version of themselves that looks far more put together than they actually feel. So next we have academic pressure. So we've seen a dramatic increase in stress related to college admissions, testing, and GPA competition. Even the most capable students describe feeling chronically overwhelmed, not just by workload, but by the belief that their future hinges on every grade. And the pursuit of perfection is taking a real toll on their emotional health. Then there's social isolation. The pandemic didn't just interrupt schooling, right? It disrupted development. And many of our current students lost critical years of social learning, peer connection, and self definition. We're now seeing that gap play out in increased loneliness, anxiety, and difficulty regulating emotions. And finally, societal uncertainty. Our young people are incredibly aware of climate anxiety, social justice tensions, and political polarization. They're growing up in a world that feels unstable, and they're internalizing that uncertainty. And what's important to remember is that no single factor operates in isolation. Students are navigating multiple pressures simultaneously, and our job as counselors is to help them contextualize those stressors and build resilience across the whole picture of their lives. So, this slide captures the heart of today's conversation, why cross training matters. So, let's start with this idea. Again, students don't compartmentalize. A student's mental health challenge doesn't pause when they walk into algebra, and their academic stress doesn't disappear when they leave for therapy. So, when a student is anxious about college, let's say it shows up in their sleep patterns, their attendance, and their sense of self worth. When they're struggling socially, it can affect motivation, focus, and even physical health. And students experience their lives as one interconnected system, and our counseling approach has to reflect that reality. The second point, access barriers are real. So we all know how hard it can be for families to find or afford outside mental health care. Cost, insurance gap, cultural stigma, right? Transportation issues and long wait lists make access nearly impossible for many. And that means that we, as school counselors, are often the most accessible mental health informed professionals in a student's life. So, cross training allows us to bridge that gap, to recognize symptoms, provide stabilization, and make effective referrals when needed. And finally, early intervention prevents escalation. So when counselors are trained to recognize warning signs early, things like changes in mood, attendance, or engagement, we can intervene before a situation becomes a crisis. So, this doesn't mean we're taking the place of therapists. It means we're creating seamless transitions between academic support, mental health care, and post secondary planning. And when we integrate these three areas, academic, emotional, and developmental, we stop reacting in silos and start working as part of a coordinated system of care. So, what does this cross training actually look like in practice? This slide illustrates it as a cycle, a continuous way of thinking and working, if you will, rather than a checklist. So, it begins with assessing holistically. When a student comes to us with an academic concern, we don't stop at the surface. We ask what else might be happening. We consider their emotional health, their social context, their family situation, even their emerging career identity. So, academic, emotional, social, and career factors all belong in the same conversation. From there, we connect the dots. So, we recognize that when something shifts or something is shifting in one area, say something like attendance drops or motivation declines, it often signals something deeper. A student's failing grade may not be about ability, it might be about anxiety, grief, or burnout. And seeing those connections help us intervene in meaningful ways. So next we apply integrated strategies. So this means drawing on tools from all three domains, academic, mental health, and post-secondary at the same time. So for example, using a brief mindfulness exercise before a college essay session, or integrating motivational interviewing techniques into academic advising. It's about blending rather than compartmentalizing. And finally, we navigate resources. So, cross trained counselors know when a student's needs exceed our scope, and we connect them effectively to outside support, whether that's a therapist, a community partner, or a college disability office. So, we stay part of that loop so that care is coordinated rather than fragmented. And this cyclical approach keeps us constantly viewing each student through multiple lenses, allowing us to address root causes instead of reacting to isolated symptoms. So it's a mindset, one that transforms our daily work into a more comprehensive and connected practice. So let's talk about the other epidemic that we're all navigating, right? Technology and social media. So, social media has completely changed the landscape of youth anxiety. And for today's teens, platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat aren't just entertainment, they are social ecosystems, right? And those ecosystems come with an enormous amount of performance pressure. Students are constantly exposed to curated images of perfection. They see the highlight reels of everyone else's life, every party, every trip, every success, and begin comparing that to their own messy behind the scenes reality. So that's where FOMO, that fear of missing out, takes hold. And in fact, more than half of teens report anxiety about missing social events. And nearly two-thirds spend 4 or more hours a day on social media, at least, right? So perfectionism thrives in this environment. Students internalize the message that everyone else is doing better, looking better, living better, and that comparison breeds relentless self criticism, right? It's no wonder why we're seeing such high rates of body image concerns, social anxiety, and burnout among young people. And now there's a new form of avoidance we need to name, cyber avoidance. So just as students might skip class or avoid social gatherings, they now ghost digital spaces. They leave group chats unread, stop responding to texts, or vanish from online communities altogether when anxiety spikes. So this is the digital version of hiding in the hallway. It's avoidance, but just in another form. But the difference here is it's like invisible, right? So adults might not see it because technically the student is online, yet emotionally they've completely withdrawn. Okay, so the cost, sleep disruption. So nearly 40% of teens are reporting poor sleep because of nighttime device use. I would say the number's even higher. The mind is never shutting off. It's constantly scanning, comparing, performing. So when we talk about helping students manage anxiety, we have to recognize that this generation doesn't get a break. The social world that used to end when the school bell rang now follows them home to bed and literally into their dreams.